Hey, good people. It's Sammy Ash here, Executive Director of the Ash Academy, and your host of our Inspire, Uplift, Engage podcast. We made it, y'all. 27 weeks of important conversations on career, academia, identity, culture, and so much more. It's been a long road since Juneteenth, and we have grown along the way. I've, of course, gotten a little bit more comfortable talking with people. It feels like more people than I've ever spoken to in my whole life about their journeys and perspectives. I'm so proud of what we've accomplished, especially during a pandemic at that. I must say that we're incredibly blessed to make a difference during such an unprecedented time. Well, we've got a lot to look forward to, including our Ash Academy store. We've got a whole bunch of merch dropping really soon. We will let you know as soon as that grand opening is scheduled. Also, crazy enough, it's almost that time again for our Black Entrepreneur Expo and Mixer. Next year, we're uniting Black entrepreneurs and professionals for a virtual experience, February 20th, 2021. So save the date. Get your tickets real soon. We will let you know when that's live as well. Now, one last time this season, let's get started with the show. Welcome, everyone, to the season finale of our first season of the Ash Academy's Inspire, Uplift, Engage podcast. I am Sammy Ash, the Executive Director of the Ash Academy, and today we are joined by a few friends, and family, people that I've known for a very long time, who are also a part of the Ash Academy or have been integral to our wonderful year. This episode is our part 3 of Parenthood, where we're discussing your experiences of parenting young adults. So I really want to already see some reactions. I really want to see what changes there. But before we get into any of that, I want everyone to give a little intro for yourself, um, who you are, where you're from. So that's who you are by your name. Give us your name, where you're from, and then how many kids do you have? And you can give ages if you want. If it's too hard to remember, leave that off. But let's go ahead and start with DeWayne.
Well, hello, my name is DeWayne Sheaffer. I'm from Carson, California. I was born and raised in LA, and I have two children. One is my eldest is 27, a male, and my youngest is 22, a female.
Perfect. Well, thank you for joining us. Now hop on in, Brandi.
Hey everybody, my name is Brandi Ware. I have 6 kids. My oldest is 19. From there, it is 14, 13, 12, 11, and 10 years old. And I am from, where am I from? Oh, Thousand Oaks, California. And I currently live in Corso, California.
Awesome. You have those ages memorized because I could not,
Oh,
especially
it's
in
a
that
good thing
line.
that like it's, you know, like that, so I can remember.
Awesome, awesome. And shout out, thank you for joining us once again. You were on our Parenthood panel, or not Parenthood, our parent panel back at our back to school event. So thank you for joining us once again.
Thank you for having me.
And last but not least, Pia.
I'm Pia Williams. I'm from Los Angeles, born and raised. I have one daughter and two stepsons. The boys are 28 and 25, and my daughter is 20.
Awesome. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So I really have asked every parent this same question through the parts. So I wanted to keep it for this one as well. When you found out you were going to be a parent for the first time, did you have a good sense of self? Anyone can jump in and go first. Yeah, start deep.
Sense of self in what way? What do you?
Did you know who you were, what you wanted to be, what you wanted out of life?
Oh, yeah, definitely. By the time I had my daughter, I was well into my 30s. So I had done the college thing. I had traveled a little bit. I had jobs and career going, and so yeah, I was ready for parenthood at that point.
Awesome. Next up, hop on in.
I had a sense of self, but I was not at the age in which everybody thinks you need to be in order to become a parent. I was very young. I was only 18. But I knew what I wanted to do with myself, and I knew what direction I wanted to go as an adult. So it didn't really change much. It just slowed the process a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, I was older. I kind of agree with Pia. Um, it was, I hate to say this, but I'm going to. It was very interesting because my wife was really interested in being a mother. Even when we got married, she was like, "Let's have kids." And it's like, hold the bus. We need to kind of like get our act together. We may not like living together. We may have to live in separate houses and visit, occasionally. But interestingly enough, my first child was born 2 years to the day of our wedding. So on our second wedding anniversary, there he came. Uh, but me, I was in career. I was working. Still thinking about what I wanted to do, but still wanting to add to my future. But no, it wasn't. It wasn't a really the climactic part was yes, I'm gonna be a father. But other than that, that was about it. Everything's pretty steady.
Next question is, how did their kind of revelation into adulthood change your sense of self? Or did it change your sense of self? And how not?
One of the things I promised myself, being an only child, is that I did not want to be like my father. And my father was very strict, had controls and what have you. I guess the mind game, he had it down packed and it worked. And so I really wanted to my children to know that, yes, I'm your parent, but I'm also a person you can talk to. There are times when we can play, and there's times when we can't play, and they know DeWayne versus Mr. Sheaffer, so they know that very easily. If I go into Mr. Sheaffer mode, it's like everyone need to hold on, and but that was really important to me because I remember when that happened for me with my father, when I became more of a I wouldn't say friend, but more of an adult. It wasn't a parent child relationship anymore. It was an adult type of relationship, and not that I didn't give him respect or lack thereof, but he was not telling me what to do. He gave me advice, and he said you could take it or leave it, but this is what I think if I asked. And it wasn't like you must do kind of thing or you should do. He really kind of changed, and I was like, wow, where you been? Anyway, so that's what I saw, and I said I definitely wanted to be that with my children.
Okay. Awesome, awesome.
I agree with DeWayne. I had the same type of thing where when I was younger, my mom was my mom. I wasn't raised with my dad. I was raised with my grandmother, and my grandmother was more my friend, and still an authority figure, but we were tight. And then as I became an adult, my mom stayed kind of more my mom. I mean, she was still that authority figure, still wanting to tell me this is what you need to do. And so when my daughter came to adulthood, when she hit 18, my goal was to become more of a friend, was to become more here. I'm going to always give you advice. I'm always going to tell you what I think, but I'm going to try to hopefully couch it in a way that you can take it or leave it, and I respect what your decision is.
Bringing up the rear, Brandi.
I'm bringing up the rear. Um, I think for me, it was a little bit different because I'm closer in age to my teenager, to my young adult, with him being 19 and a half, almost 20. So I try to approach parenting as like I've been there before. Like I remember we all have been there, obviously, but it wasn't that long ago where I've been where you are. So like I know the things that you're trying to do. And I must say, as a mom, it's interesting raising a son. Like I don't know about everybody else. I don't know if it's the same thing for like a dad to a boy, or I'm not quite sure. But I can say, because as a girl, you grow up and you're always told what boys are doing and what boys are thinking, and how you need to be. So to raise the opposite sex, the opposite gender, and like when he would have phone calls or things like that at a certain time, I'm like, where is this other kid's mama? Like, you don't need to be talking, keep it respectful. But I think that I think it definitely has changed the way that I parent. A shift occurred probably when he hit about 16 years old. I'm still telling you what to do. Like that hasn't changed, and I still do it even though he's 19 and considered an adult. We had a conversation way early on at 15, 16 that let him know, when you turn 18, you're only an adult in the eyes of the law. Over here, unless you start paying bills, you're not an adult here. So don't get in trouble, because then you will be treated as such. But you have to earn being an adult. An adult is not just you turn 18 and magically, you're grown. So that's kind of like, but, we tried to shift it to that. Come talk to us if you need to. But that's been since, early teens, because the teens apparently are going through a lot nowadays, and they need to talk to you about it early on. I don't know if you guys are experiencing that same thing, or your kids are older than mine. So let me know if you've gone through that stage. But yeah, that's where we're at.
Perfect segue into kind of, where do you see those boundaries showing up, where you're like, I need to either nip this in the bud or like prepare for it? Because it's not just they turn 18 and then the relationship changes. It has to be like a cascading, evolving thing that changes. Like, okay, I'm noticing these things. They do have more responsibility. I can trust them with this X, Y, and Z. Or was it overnight, like, hey, you're an adult now, you have to do A through Z? Let me know what you guys' experiences were. I know it's very vague, but in terms of your relationship, what boundaries did you end up setting up for them at 18, or was it before 18, if you feel like sharing those things?
I know with Erica, um, because she was homeschooled, we were with each other all the time. So I think her boundaries with me were probably a little different than if she'd had a different schooling and education experience. We were with each other all the time. And when she wasn't with me, she was in dance classes. So she didn't have a whole lot of going and wilding out and doing different types of things. By the time she turned 18, which was midsummer, she was off in a dance program for the summer and gone. And a month after she came home, she moved permanently. So she instantly went to being under my wing to being an independent adult. So a lot of what she needed as far as being prepared to live on her own and be kind of that own adult, I had really started preparing her for when she was 14 and 15 and 16, because I knew the very real possibility with her wanting to go into the dance field that she could very well end up gone. So we started that process pretty early. And so by 18, I was like, okay, and when she left, she was ready.
But was it a process for you to get there, to know to start that early? How did you know that that was the right age to kind of prepare her for that?
Well, again, it had to do with her choice of career.
Okay.
And, knowing that if she could very easily get picked up by a company in New York. And then what were we going to do? We went to New York when she was 17, and of course she fell in love with it and instantly wanted to go. But I knew, but I'd kind of been preparing all along, because I saw in her the fact that she loved to dance when she was 7, and that this might be a career goal. And so I had always geared myself for what is it she's going to do. So by 14 or 15, I knew that was the direction, and I was ready for it. And it was like, okay, let's work to get you independent, so that you don't need me at every moment. I mean, she calls me regularly and, we talk. She's gone now, but we started that process really early because I knew what her career goals were and I knew what that meant ultimately.
Awesome, awesome. It's great to have a supportive parent, especially in the arts. I will say that.
To kind of pick up where Brandi left off a few moments ago, since I have one of each as far as gender is concerned, um, they both were very quiet. That cracks me up all the time. So I always knew that they were talking to Pat is an awesome mom. She still is a mom. I was gonna say was. She ain't gone nowhere. Um, she's an awesome mom and stuff. And so they always kind of talk to her. I was a soft place for them to land whenever I say tripped. So they can come and talk to me about it, cry about it, or whatever. And so I was there. And then also too, when I had to be, my son, he is such a everything has to be the way it needs to be for him. And I'm not saying that he's, really structured or whatever, but he's a linear thinker. So he, changes. He doesn't like changes. Everything needs to be stay the same and stuff. So whenever he changed from elementary to middle school to high school, even to college, he used to have these stomach pains. And I knew they were all in the head, but I didn't say he was stupid, but I would, tell him to calm down, breathe. It's going to be all right, whatever, whatever, and stuff. He's like, oh, go stuff. Because when we took him to Cal State Long Beach for to get his dorm and stuff, he fell on the ground. They had all this popping circumstances going on. He was on the ground crying and carrying on. Needless to say, I went to father mode and said, "You need to get yourself together right now." so, and so he did. Um, but as far as the transition, since they both went away to college, well, Alex was at Cal State Long Beach. He thought I was trying to get rid of him. And we lived in Lakewood, right down the street. How we gonna get rid of you? Oh, you gonna move while I'm gone? Yeah, right. Sure. Okay. So he came home a lot that first year. And I wanted him to stay in the dorm just to have independence to, if something does happen, he's on campus, it's structured. There's, campus police and dorm RAs and all this other kind of stuff. Well, he stayed in the dorm 1 year. And then after that, he commuted from home and did online classes, and he was much happier. But he was still independent. I allowed him that. I did tell him, kind of like Brandi, yes, you lived up in this house. You're gonna respect the curfew. So he was challenging at one time. I said, I'm the wrong one. So uh, everything was fine with that. With my daughter, she wanted to go to Florida to go to school, and Pat didn't want her to go. And I was like, that's where she wants to go, let her go. I didn't care because I knew she was ready. She was ready to take on life and the world and stuff. We talked. She had a really good head on her shoulders. And at age 12, I don't know what happened, but the switch to something went on of nasty because she started looking at me crazy and saying, I don't like you and so on and so forth. And I said, oh, okay, well, maybe you need to have a little more time in your room and we can come back and get, regroup. Second day I came home was the same thing. And I pulled her to the side. It was an adult moment. I said, you need to listen here, Miss Thing. I don't play. I don't care if you don't like me and stuff. And I don't know, where is this going, Sammy? Because I want to be nice. But I thought she was in another ethnicity household. I'll say that. I said, oh, no, don't be bringing that up in here. We are not playing. I told her mother, I said, you better talk to her and talk to her quick. And things changed. But then we were best of buddies and stuff, and we could talk about a lot of things. And I really wanted her to understand, just like what Brandi was talking about, how boys are and what they do and how they think and all this kind of stuff. I wanted her to know that I was the best man in her life. So that if she encounters some roughnecks or whatever, she's like, not today. Or understand that whatever they may be trying to sell, she's had that. She's had a father who's fawned all over her, who's taken care of her and let her know that she's the princess in the house, not that she's going to get that from everybody or whatever, but still have a way to measure, if you will, into a relationship and stuff. So I trusted her more than I did Alex. I always said if anything ever goes down, my daughter's going to take care of Alex. So, but anyway, but they're different. You're right, Randy. They are different. I'm a little bit more protective of Asia. I say she's my heart, but I love Alex as well. And, And I tell them that one of the things that we end our calls with all the time, because right now she's in Arizona, she's in her profession working and stuff. I don't like it, but I know that's what she wants to do, and I had to let it go. But whenever we end our calls, we always say, I love you. And we mean that. It's not just a rote process that we go through. And I did that when they were in college, and we continue to do that today. So they know where I'm at and who I am and what's up and stuff. But, I think it was just the process of going away to school is really where the transition came in and how to learn. And now Asia as an adult, she's asking me, how do I take care of my car? I'm like, oh, I forgot. You didn't know that. So we're working on that piece. He's like, lights came on. I'm like, well, let's find out what those lights mean. So,
Let's go to a
anyway, I'll
professional.
stop there.
um, Brandi, did you go yet?
No, I didn't go yet.
Yeah, hop on in, hopping in.
So, well, to answer your question, you were asking when did the transition kind of occur, or how did we know that our kids were ready for this advancement, I guess. I think that, like DeWayne just said, like a switch, just something happens. It's not like, it's just one day you realize all of a sudden your child is more mature in whatever capacity that it is. And it's like, okay, we're ready to go to the next step. So it is kind of a gradual thing, but that little light bulb of where you realize, okay, they're not that same little kid anymore, and they're ready to take on more responsibility, more information, more like life skills, so that they're ready for the world. It just kind of hits you one day as a parent. You look at your kid and you're like, oh, you're a different child now. Okay, let's move forth with that. I remember when Kai hit his little transitional stage, it was like, oh, wait a minute, we get to joke around with you now, and you don't have to be so sensitive, and we can talk about a little bit more adult, conversation with you. I was very excited when this transition happened, because for me, I like to talk about all kinds of things. So it was, I want to be in the business. So I ask them all kinds of questions about the girls, about school, about everything. And so I'm looking forward to when my next set of children get to that transitional phase where we could talk about stuff just very straightforward and direct. Because when you have to like put in baby terms and the birds and the bees, it's very difficult for me to go there. So I like the transitional stage when they get to that point where it's like you can treat them a little bit more grown, but then constantly remind them that they're not an adult. Yeah, I like that.
Awesome. So what would you guys say is the most challenging phase if we were going to break it down, since you guys are the vets now? You've been through, or you're during the third phase, but it's like children, the pre-adolescent phase, then there's that teenage phase, and then now, although they might be teenager by number, but they're in the adult phase now. What was the most challenging era of their life for you to deal with as a parent?
Ooh, that preteen stage. That was it.
That 11, 12?
11, 12, maybe even into 13.
And
Yes.
why?
Because, they're still really young, but they think they know everything. I mean, that part keeps going, but something about being 12 and 13, they really think they're grown. And that's when they start to challenge you. And I mean, my daughter was easy. Again, we had a really close relationship. She was with me all the time. But there were still days where I'd look at her and like, who do you think you're talking to? Or who do you think you're dealing with? you know and I'd have to question her, and luckily I have that look on my face where I'm like, really, you talking to me like that? And she backed down. But there were still moments, and there was something about that preteen age where they're like, oh, I'm a teenager, and it's like it ain't all that.
It's their peers. It's their peers, because that's the age range that I work with. It is their friends, because all of a sudden they're leaving elementary and they're getting into that middle school stage, right? And in middle school, it's when their peers have now more of an influence than at certain times the parents can have. And so the friends be in their ear pumping them up and gassing them up. And then when they come home, they forget that they're not with their peers. And then that's when they want to talk to you, how they want to talk to you. And like DeWayne said, he got to get, that other voice on and let him know who he is. That's what happened. And you got to like bring them back down to reality for a second there. That's what happens. It's the friends and the internet. It's the
I know
go ahead,
with
Pia.
with my stepsons. When they moved in, they were already teenagers, but the youngest one was, he was 12. And he's a challenge anyway. You know, he's that kid that will push the limits all the time. And, you know, and now he's 12 and suddenly living with his father, which he really hadn't done before. And, you know, just thought, you know, he was the shit, really. And because my husband was a fireman, so he'd be gone for, he could be gone for 2 or 3 days, so it would just be me. And we're fairly new living in this space, and it's a small space, so we're living on top of each other. And he tried a couple of things with me, and I brought him back down to earth real quick. He figured out who I was. But yeah, it was that exact thing of him going to school and getting all pumped up and then coming home and forgetting I'm not that one. I'm gonna stop you right here. I'm gonna say one word to you, and then we're gonna go at it. He figured it out pretty quickly, but it was interesting for a while.
The interesting thing is, I agree with you. With my son, it was 10. He acted out one morning. We were going to school and he was tripping. And I said, I would put you on the curb with what you got on and call your grandparents to come pick you up. And that was the one interaction I had, and I remember. And it was over after that. The same thing with my daughter when I talked about that 12-year-old thing. We had that interaction those 2 days and we were done. And she realized, oh, this is the friend. So, it was there, but it was brief. It really was brief. I did not have a whole, years of drudgery with all of that and stuff. And it was always interesting. I used to compare my kids when we go out to restaurants. And so, some kids are acting out, running all over the place. Not mine. I don't know if we gave them the eye or what. You know how your mom used to do? Well, when I was young, it's like, okay, we're going in this store. You are not touching anything. You are not going to get anything. Don't be asking for it. And you better act right or else I'm going to act up right there with you. And I said, oh, okay, well, I got the lay of the land.
One time, Erica and I took a cross-country trip from LA to DC on the train.
Wow. Ooh.
And so it was 3 days. And the last part of our trip from Chicago to DC, we ended up in coach. So we're sitting up all night, and in the seats next to us were two grown women who were loud and obnoxious. And, it went on for a couple of hours. And then about 3 hours into it, a woman sitting behind me stood up and leaned over our chair. Well, she tapped me on the shoulder and she was like, how old is your daughter? And I said, well, she's 12. And she handed me a $5 bill and said, I just want to thank you. Your daughter is so nice and so quiet and so respectful. And, those are my two daughters over there, grown women. And this woman's trying to give me $5. And I'm like, no, I don't, she doesn't need the money. This is what's expected of her. This is not, something special that she's doing because I bribed her. This is what's expected. And the woman insisted. So I ended up just giving her the $5. But it was like, okay, I'm glad you recognize, somebody really parenting their kids. But what happened? You were a teacher and this is the way your two ended up. What's going on?
Wow, Pia with the roast of that lady. Brandi, did you already share, or did you want to hop in?
I mean, I think
I'm keeping this open, so yeah, I'm keeping it open.
Like, so everything that, yeah, I agree with everything that was said. I think as parents, well, I mean, I'm like DeWayne, I don't know where this is being aired, but I think there's a couple of different groups of parenting styles, right? And I think in a particular group, or at least the group that I was raised in and the group that I currently raise in, your parents are not your friends at the beginning stages. And when you hit that moment of transition where you start tripping as a preteen/teenager and they have to just remind you again of who they are, it only takes like a few reminders for most kids. It's like 2 or 3 or less. Some are more difficult and challenging than others, but most of them it's 2 or 3 or less and they be on the same page. And I have to say that I was very thankful with Kai, especially as a boy, and as a boy who grew to be bigger than me and work out and muscles and everything. But he still knew if need be, I will have no problem taking it to the ground with you and choking you out. Like if I need to do that. I'm just saying, So like there has been moments like that. And I think as long as you keep that open communication with your children and they know, hey, you know, my parents are cool. They're not my friends right now, but they are cool. I can come to them, this, that, the other. They have my back. But if I don't do what I'm supposed to, like she said, what is expected? You have to let the kids know from the beginning what is expected. And as long as they know where you stand, then they can strive to actually achieve that and be actually parented. You know, I think a lot of people are out here talking about their parenting their children, but they're really letting their children do a lot of stuff on their own and figure out a lot of stuff on their own. And they don't really guide them and direct them and check them when they need to be checked, how they need to be checked. You know, everybody's always so afraid to say, or, you know, whatever. No, say what you need to say. Let them know that they will be dead. No, I'm just joking. If they do the wrong thing. And then, you know, you keep it pushing. You don't usually have those problems. You don't have to go there anymore. You know, like it just kind of runs a little bit smoother after they have their moment. So I was nodding and agreeing to everything that they were saying, because yeah, that's definitely how it goes here. We always tell people, because people wonder, in this household, it is not a democracy. Right? It's a dictatorship. Like what we say is what it is. And people sometimes think, you know, that you can be too hard on your kids. And I tell them all the time, that's fine. If me being too hard on my children messes them up when they're adults, that's something I'll deal with when they're adults. But for right now, like this is what we're doing. Because I don't want my kids to be that person in the restaurant or on the train or wherever, running around, acting a nut. You know, the ones that you look at and you're just like, can you, somebody, anybody, please get them, sit down. The ones where you want to say, sit down. Like, no, there's just too many of us for that. No. So yes, I agree with it all.
Mhm. That makes me want to segue into kind of a reflective piece where you realized you weren't going to be the only, be it mentor, guide, and I don't mean like parenting partner, I mean like other adults in their life, be it family, other relatives, or teachers. When did you realize there was going to be outside influences for your kid that you may or may not have to intervene with or set boundaries with?
I pretty much I knew pretty early, because of the field that Erica was in with her dancing, and she started dancing at 3. And ballet teachers play an integral role in developing a lot of their character. You know,
Mhm.
just in giving them boundaries and you know, things to really strive for. And so when Erica was 10, I moved her to a new ballet studio, and the owner was just starting the company or just starting the studio. And I stepped in to help because she was struggling. And because we spent so much time with her uh, over those 6 years, Erica really came to look at her as a second mother. You know, I mean, we were that close. And so you know, that kind of just reminded me that, you know, from then on she was going to have that kind of mentorship. There were always going to be those people that played that heavier role, because um, you know, whether it be just teaching her or mentoring her, helping her get to other levels or whatever it was, there were always going to be those other people. You know, in the end, every one of them was real clear that I was Erica's mother.
I was going to ask you, was
And
it
that
weird
was, I
at
was
any
not going to
point?
be
Okay.
usurped.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, in 2016, I had a falling out with that particular ballet teacher. And we were leaving the studio, and Erica ended up staying there for a few more extra months because she was teaching and taking classes, and they were preparing for a show and competition and everything. And I knew I was taking Erica out of there. I just wanted to let her go ahead and complete those activities.
Mhm.
Um, and at one point, the teacher said to somebody else, and I think Erica was within earshot, and said, "We don't want to have a Misty Copeland situation." So if you're unfamiliar with the Misty Copeland situation, when Misty was 14 or 15, she was considered, you know, a rising star, of course. And she had been mentored by the woman who had discovered her. And she actually went to go live with this woman. And it got to the point where Misty never wanted to come home to visit her family. And her mother at one point told her, no, you're coming home. And there was a custody battle that went on.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's on TV. You can actually find the video of them. It was some talk show that they ended up on, and Misty's in tears at 16, and they're having this custody battle over her. And both Francesca and I said, hey, that's no, I'm her mother. Don't even try it with me. And she knew. She was like, we're not gonna have a Misty Copeland battle. So yeah, I made clear with everybody, I'm Erica's mother. I make the final decision. I will listen to you, and if you give me good cause to think that this is the way things should go, I will consider it. But first and foremost, I'm her mother. You have to get through me to get to her.
I have no kids. I need everybody on this podcast, all of our viewers, but I have very strong emotions. And I was like, don't try me either. I'm with Pia. Don't do it.
That's one. I never did realize it. I knew that they were going to have teachers, and I interacted with a lot of their teachers. Pat interacted a lot more, back to school night and all that other kind of stuff. Uh, but I remember one time I was on sabbatical, and so I was at home, and so PTA met during the day. So I would go to these meetings and stuff, the only male in the room. But anyway, I would go in and hear what they're doing and blah 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 blah. And but the issue came up with Alex, that one of his teachers, he's really sensitive. He really is. As Roz would say, he cries at the opening of a supermarket. But anyway, so he was in his math class, and his math teacher she just yelled at everybody for no apparent reason. So Alex was like, I don't want to get yelled at and stuff. So he came home with a assignment test, and he looked at the test. He said, Dad, I did this right, because we look over stuff. And he says, I did this right. And I don't understand why she marked it wrong. I said, well, maybe it was a mistake. Maybe she was trying to get things done. Things like that happen. I said, so ask the teacher. He's like, I'm not going to ask the teacher. And I said, well, what do you want to do? And so it was in middle school. And so he said, well, why don't you come and talk to the teacher? Now, he usually does not want me to be involved at all. Because he says, I ask too many questions, that, I'm putting down the law, what have you. And I said, okay. So we sat down, and so she was very nice, obviously, with the parent being there. And I explained to her what was going down. And so she says, oh, Alex, of course, in a nice, sensitive voice, oh, Alex, you can talk to me anytime and let me know and stuff. I said, well, I understand you do a lot of yelling in your class. So she says, well, sometimes I do have some challenges with students and stuff. I said, well, you need to understand that has an impact on students approaching you if you want them to approach you. Now, I'm not telling you how to teach. This is not my pedagogy. So you do what you need to do, but you need to think about how your behavior impacts your students' behavior and their learning. So just, you think about that, and we'll talk another time. So, so that, and everything after that was fine and stuff. And so Alex realized that I am his, I'm his advocate. If he needs something, if something ain't going down right on the school and stuff. And I also let principals know who I am. The good thing was I worked like 3 blocks away. And so I can get in the car and get down there real quick if something goes down or whatever. So they all knew that and stuff. It's like, oh, okay. Yes, Mr. Sheaffer. No, it's DeWayne right now. But Mr. Sheaffer can visit. My daughter, on the other hand, she cracked me up. She graduated with honors. I think she was one of the top 7 that graduated with honors from high school. And so she was, she reads a lot. So she knows the law and follows the law of the land and what have you. And she decided to change one of her classes. I think it was her PE class, because she was tired of the PE class, because how you have to run, and then you have your time, you got to beat that time, you got to beat that time. She's like, I'm not going for this. And she did it for 2 years. So she decided to get on the color guards. And I asked her, I said, why do you want to do that? Because that's when she told me about the PE thing. But anyway, but the color guard class conflicted with her calculus class in her senior year. And she knew she needed to take this calculus class on where she wanted to go. And so then she says, come on, we got to go to the school. I said, for what? We got to see the counselor. I said, for what? And so I'm driving and she's not telling me anything. So we get to the school. She says, all you need to do is listen. I will take care of this. And I'm like, okay. So we get into the room and stuff. We sit with the counselor, and she brings up the calculus conflict issue. He's like, oh, yes, you and a couple of other students have that conflict, and we know that you have your color guard. So we're going to put you in a calculus class so you can have that, requirement met when you graduate and stuff. He's like, oh, okay. Then the next thing, of course, she wants to know, was I going to wear the white gown at graduation? And so the counselor said, oh, you're definitely on track for that. Don't you worry. You just go and do you. And I said, well, why did you need me? Just in case something went crazy, I knew you was going to handle it. So I just wanted you to be there. But, otherwise she had it all under control. And I was just proud of the critical thinking that went into all of that. And I was like, yes, save your daddy, because, he can act a fool in many places. And I don't want to do that all the time, but I will. But so that was just, truly, truly an awesome thing, just to see them, kind of take on some things and understand that life isn't going to be good. First of all, for them to know that they're Black. Because everybody, they tell me, says, oh, that person's white. And I said, oh, yes, and stuff. Or things that happen and they just don't understand. They come home asking me questions. And I'm trying to not put anybody in a bad light, but to understand that systems are not always as they seem to be, or as they are identified by law. So, you just got to be careful, especially Alex. To say you can't be, you driving while Black. So you understand that. And, having conversations of that nature. But it's really, really interesting. I'll stop there. Brandi, I guess it's your turn, isn't it?
Thanks for tagging me in. I think you had mentioned, like, when did we realize? I was so into everybody's everything that I don't remember the question for.
I was like, Brandi, please don't ask me what the question was, because I'm in the conversation too. I'm like, dude, they've been sharing.
You asked, like, when did we realize that a village was? What did you say?
When did you realize that there were going to be outside influences that are also adults who are not inside of your parent partnership? So
I think from
relatives.
the very beginning. Yeah. From the very beginning, when I don't know, I feel like when you become a parent, you realize there's going to be outside influences that are not necessarily your partner, right? And because you have grandparents who give input, you have TV that tells you, especially when you're a new parent, like everybody, friends, parents, like everybody wants to give you input on how to raise that new child, because you're new to this club, right? So everybody wants to tell you how you need to be doing it. And I think so you realize very early on that you have to figure out your own way. But then the more you start relying on other people to help you babysit or take your kid here, or, play an active role in those parts, take your child to the doctor, then you open yourself up, whether you realize it or you don't, for that input to start being inputted into your child, right? So, like, I'll give you an example. I do daycare. That is what I do for a living, right? I've been doing it for a lot of years. I love it. Prior to that, I worked at a school. I worked with middle school children all the way down to preschool children in the classroom. Everybody always thinks about how teachers will pour into a child, right? Either negatively or positively, but they don't ever think about childcare providers who take care of them when they're younger, who take care of them afterwards, or even babysitters for that matter, okay? So right now, during this COVID situation, people are becoming more and more aware. People don't realize, like, I will have a child 10 to 12 hours of a day. So if I'm having your kid 10 to 12 hours of the day and I'm not influencing them in some type of way, then we have a problem, right? And that's inevitable. You might not want me to, but it's going to happen one way or the other, because you're leaving your child here to be cared for 10 to 12 hours out of a day. So for parents, I think sometimes they don't always think about how those outside influences will come in, whether they like it or not, which is why it's important to build up your village with people that you trust. I tell people all the time, I personally was an only child. I have like a million aunties and uncles. DeWayne is one of my uncles. Like, I have a million aunties and uncles, right? And it's because my parents had a village of people who they entrusted that could discipline me, that could say something to me if I needed it, that could give me advice if I needed it, whatever the case, may be. And sometimes we put the wrong people in our children's path and allow them to have that input on our children that we shouldn't. and I think it's also important what DeWayne said, for our kids to know that we're there for them. And also Pia, like, her daughter knew that this is my mom. Like, regardless of what you might want to do or tell me I should do, you better still run that by my mother first. And I think my kids definitely know that, because somebody will say, hey, you can go get, and I say candy because of their age group. They'll say, hey, feel free, take as much as you want. You could go get candy. And when my kids don't start moving, the people are like, why aren't you going? And they're like, oh no, you got to ask my mom first. Like, this is where it stops. And for a lot of people, they'd be like, candy, really? No, it's that simple. It starts with something small like that, before the things start getting bigger, of what people start telling your child of what they can do. And it's just like, no, did you run that by one of my parents first? Like, I don't know about that. Or, my son, when you were talking, DeWayne, it made me think of Kai. He was in middle school and he had got in trouble. Now, well, first he was in 4th grade and he had got in trouble by the teacher, and he kept saying, for whatever reason, Mom, it's just me and this other kid who are getting in trouble. I don't know why. It's just us. I said, well, tell me about the other kid. Long story short, the teacher was a little bit racist. Only 2 Black kids in the class. My son and the other 1 Black boy always got in trouble, right? So I said, let me go see, because I'm not that parent who thinks that my kid can do no wrong, right? I know that it's possible. So I said, let me go see for myself. So I went to the parent teacher meeting. First of all, she didn't know my child's name. She kept referring to my child as the other child. And I had to stop her because she was doing it so much. And I was like, do you even know who I'm here for? Because I don't think that you do, because this is what my child's name is. So don't talk to me about the other child. Talk to me about this child. And then she's like, no, that's who I'm talking about. I said, no worries. When can I come to your class? So she was like, oh, you have to make an appointment. I don't want to make an appointment. I'm asking you right now, like, when can I come? She's like, oh, well, whenever you're free. Fine, I'm free tomorrow. Look, your kid needs to know that you can make the time, just like he said, to be there in a hot second. And the staff needs to know. People underestimate talking to the people and letting them know who you are. You got to let them know who you are. I went up to that class, and let me tell you, if I wasn't running that class in the first 15 minutes that I was there. And I think that when people realize that you're going to show up for your kids, it's a big difference. They're looking for the kids who nobody shows up for them. So you can talk about my child if they're really doing what they're supposed to be doing. So fast forward, so Kai knew I'm going to come out if I need to come out. But when he hit middle school, right, and he got in trouble because he got into a fight, I'm like, why is the school calling me? I'm going to turn to you first. Now, this is your opportunity to tell me, because before I go up here and act the net at the school, I need to know what really happened. So if this ain't what really happened, tell me now. Because if I go up there and tell all my kids, if I go up there and you make me look stupid because I go off, and it wasn't something I should have gone off about, oh, you better say all your prayers, because it's going to be on when we get back to the house. So yeah, I just think, the village is crucial, and influences happen from the very beginning. But if our kids and other people know that you're a very present parent, it does alter the influences that come upon your child, for sure. Sorry, that was long-winded, huh?
That was great, though.
Let me add to
We
that.
got a lot of time. Go ahead.
When my daughter was at a particular dance studio, a well-known dance studio, and a lot of the kids that are there, their parents, the studio would go and pick them up from school and drop them off, and a lot of the parents weren't around. Mm-hmm. And you got all kinds of activity. I mean, the teachers there would do as much as they could to kind of round them up and keep them busy and going in what they were supposed to be doing. But when I'd show up, I'd pop up and, no, I need to speak to this teacher, or I need to speak to the director, or whatever. It was like, what's she doing here? And it was like, I came to advocate for my child. I'm
Right.
not going to jump in the middle of everything. When she got missed in an audition for their Nutcracker show, I counseled her and I made her go talk to the teachers, because, it's like, you're 16, you need to start doing this, because this is going to be your career. But there were other things that I knew I had to go in and advocate for, and Pia would pop up in a heartbeat, and and it was like, oh, Pia, Erica's mother's here again. Yes, I'm here again, and I will keep talking to you guys. You will see me over and over and over again. You want me to show up at 10 a.m.? I can do that, because you know what? I homeschool. I can show up whenever you want me to. And
Oh,
whenever
they
you
can't
don't
stand
want me
people
to.
like you.
What?
They can't stand people like you, like DeWayne, who down the street from the school, like me,
Exactly.
who work from home. I'm like, I'm making my personal mission to be ready. Like, you ain't said nothing but a word. Let me show up, because
I will show up.
they think that you're not going to show up. And that's the part, that's the kicker. And it's funny because my husband used to look at me crazy until he started doing it. And he realized how much fun it is. It's like, oh, like, I'm ready. You stay ready, and then it gets disappointing, because when you're like, oh, so ready, then everybody want to act right, and you're just like, like, all that went to waste.
Oh my gosh. That is a perfect segue to ask about confidence as a parent. Since once again, you guys are vets, I would like you guys to reflect on how you came into your confidence in the advocacy role and that mentorship role and all of these different roles that you facilitate as a parent. When did you say, okay, I've got a handle on this?
One of the things that was really interesting that I was surprised it popped up is that, and I've said this to Pat too, so don't think that she doesn't know this, is that the love that I have for my kids and the protection I have for my kids is sometimes even stronger than I have for my wife. But and I'm like, I don't, I'm like, I had to think about that for a while. I said, what's going on here, Wayne? Is this something cuckoo? And it's because you're there from that egg all the way up to wherever they are today and stuff, and your interactions along the way. The first thing I wanted to be was their protector. I just wanted to protect them from whatever I could, and then prepare them to protect themselves for when I'm not there. So that was kind of like a very important role for me. You know, I'm in education, but I knew I didn't want to work in K through 12. That wasn't going to work for me, because I don't need laws to protect me. I need laws to protect them. But anyway, but so that's what I did. And so Pat being in the elementary school and stuff, all that good stuff. Like I said, the back to school night stuff. Never been to one. However, when my daughter was in the honor guard, color guard, I forgot what it was, and they had the football games. They were performing on the ground. I'm there. I'm one of the loudest, craziest parents there. She tries to ignore me, like, and everyone knows. He's like, well, we saw your dad. So, but anyway, but the confidence was always there, I guess, in that. I didn't see it. I didn't see anything being a weak. I've been around babies and stuff, not that I've raised them, but, so I felt very comfortable in all of that, and interacting with people, interacting with adults all the time and stuff. So I'm talking to the principals and what have you, and having conversation even with my children, and very, very confident, because we just can't go through this life blindly and think that just because you're here with us is everyone else has that same thought to protect you and to make sure that you are not in any harm's way and stuff. And just because of the black and white issue and stuff, as Brandi said, she's rearing her children in Thousand Oaks. We lived in Lakewood, and and we go to the schools, and the things that our children interacted with, it was more whites than they were blacks, and very few. Yeah. And so it was like, and I'm sure probably the same thing too with your daughter, Pia. But anyway, so I had to be confident, and it wasn't a struggle, I guess I should say, to do this work, if you will. And I did not need a manual or anything. And some of you mentioned too how the grandparents want to get involved. All of a sudden they become these great, parents all of a sudden, and you look back, he's like, you didn't do that crap with me. So that's why I always say grandparents always have a twofer. They have a second chance to redeem themselves. But anyway, so that confidence was there, and in the beginning, I didn't really even notice it. It just evolved. I remember my godson, not you, Sammy, but I do have others. Anyway, and there's enough love for everyone. But anyway, the focus.
Sammy, you better get yours first.
Yeah, we'll take that
years
offline.
Older than Alex, and he was a bigger kid too. Even though he and Alex are about the same height now. But anyway, and he did something to hurt Alex, unintentional. It was an accident and stuff. But I was pissed. I was like, "What you doing? You big old boy, you coming over here messing with my kid and stuff." And I had to like dial it down. So because it was just an accident, kind of thing. And it wasn't emergency room worthy and kind of stuff. But anyway, but yeah, I am so protective. And that's why I ask a lot of questions. And they hate to tell me Alex had a girlfriend for about 3 or 4 months before he told me. And I was like, what you scared of? Because you're going to ask me a lot of questions. I said, well, hell yeah. I need to know where she's from, what's going on. How'd she find you? How'd you find her? or, or whatever and stuff. Asia hasn't said nothing. She's been real quiet, keeping it very close to her chest. So whatever it is and stuff. Of course, I asked Alex or my wife, and they're like, we don't know anything. Yeah, right. Okay. But anyway, I'll stop.
Or any more tea gets spilled.
I want to chime in on when DeWayne was talking about the white black thing. Erica's entire existence has been the minority in, with the exception of our household, sort of being the minority. She's a homeschool child. There's not a lot of us in homeschooling. I mean, I can find us all across the country, but I can't find us here in LA, not in a group. And so most of the people that, we were around socially were whites. And then she went into ballet, when she got into dance, and she really wanted ballet. And we didn't gravitate toward the Black studio. We gravitated toward ballet studios, but really ballet-based studios, which meant she was one of the few Black children there. And just during our time while we were homeschooling and the really social aspects of it, we became friends with people. And so the advocation for that wasn't as difficult. I would have open conversations, but it wasn't really difficult. It really wasn't until she got a little bit older in the ballet world, and that I became more of an advocate because she doesn't have the same body type. She doesn't have the straight hair that easily goes into a bun. She looks a little different. I mean, beautiful kid, but, she's got hips and she's got a butt and she's got thighs. And that became an issue at her original studio. And so, when I started really realizing what was going on and, how she was the most advanced student in the studio, but was being put in back of numbers. I was like, wait a minute, this isn't cool. She's level 7. The rest of your students are level 5 because it was a growing studio. And she's in the back of almost every number that she's dancing this year. Why? I don't need her to be the star of every one, but something's going on here. And the teacher had kind of intimated some things, over time. And I realized she was really starting to play them out. So when I pulled her out, the first thing I did was put her in a Black studio. It wasn't a ballet-based studio. It wasn't what Erica's passion was. But I was like, you need to get back and you need to see other dancers that look like you. You need to see other dancers that have butts and have thighs and have the curly hair. And, thankfully, when she was at the studio, they didn't care about your hair. You didn't have to wear it in a bun, because that's not what our hair does. And, so there were so many things that helped build back her spirit before she went on and went back to focusing on ballet. But really just having to be that advocate and explain to her what was going on, what I was seeing, and making sure that she saw it too. So that when I finally pulled the plug and said, okay, we need to leave, she was on board with it. Because at 16, I wanted her to know that she had a voice in this. And I didn't want her to stay just because it was the easy thing and it was what she was used to, because the dance world isn't stable like that to begin with. And, you may jump year to year to year to year. So I wanted her to already understand that that's what was going to happen. And so this was just as good as an opportunity to go ahead and start making that first jump and to understand why. And so she really needed to be on board with it. And, it was a summer of conversation. Or I shouldn't say a summer, it was a winter of conversation when we decided to leave. And she jumped to the new studio and then went away for the summer. And when she came back, we realized we had another decision. Do you stay another year, even though it doesn't feed your passion, or do you jump? But you're the new kid again, you know? And she had exactly one day to think about that. Yeah. We came back from New York, and we ended up at the Grove, and we sat there for lunch. And over the course of about sitting there for 2 hours, we had to have that conversation. And what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? Because the new studio would be starting that Monday. Or do you wait and you go back to your old studio? You know, and ultimately the decision was made to go ahead and jump again. But you know, those were lessons in there too, you know, of, you know, this is the career you're going to have. Make sure you're moving forward. And if you're not moving forward, then why are you staying in this place? So you know, a lot of my job at that point became having me teach her what to look for, and then how to help her make that decision, so that later on she can start to make those decisions on her own. Always looking for somebody to, you know, kind of be that ear, but make those decisions on your own. You know what it is you're looking for. And you know, that was the big lessons that I was trying to give her at 16.
Okay, pulling up the rear again. Here I go. I think that uh, I never really had a struggle, even as a young parent, with confidence in my parenting. I think that usually people who aren't confident in themselves, who go into having a child, tend to struggle with their parenting, you know, struggles and confidence level. But I think once people just let go and realize that everybody messes up as a parent, like there is no perfect parent, period, just straight up, no matter how well you do. Like she's like, wait a minute, no matter how, like there's going to be a point where we f up at some point, right? So I think once, you know, people realize that sooner, they alleviate a little bit of the pressure off themselves, and then they just allow room and space for themselves to just parent. And once you can get there, and the sooner you get there, the better it is for you, because it's like you stop judging yourself and getting in your own way, and you can create the environment as close to what you thought it up to be in your head as, you know, possible. And I think that's what I've really strived to do, because you get a lot of judgment being a young parent, being a teen parent, being things like that. You know, people automatically think you're going to be, you know, poor, broke, on the county, on, you know, living with your mama, and everything else that's very negative, stereotypical. That's what they think. So you have to strive to prove them wrong. Like, no, I am actively raising my child. No, I go to work every day. Yes, I still go to school, like things like that. And you just have to be good with yourself. And then you go on about the rest. And as I got more children, I think that just boosted my confidence level, because I started doing, I hate to go backwards, but when we were talking about those people you sit and you look around at. And so every time I see people with kids like that, the obnoxious ones, the ones who are running around and just acting crazy, I go like this. I'm like, okay, yes, because it just boosts my, like, nobody even has to say anything or offer anything or anything like that. But I just stop and look around and I'm like, yes, because I know I've parented kids that I would want to be around. You know what I mean? Like whenever I'm around kids that I can't stand, I'm just like, oh, thank you, Lord Jesus, for the set that I have, and for, you know, allowing them to be the way that they are. And when people do give them a compliment, I say thank you, but I also let them know it's a daily thing. We work on it every day. When they say, oh, your kids are so well behaved, thank you. We work on it every day. Like that is my go-to answer, because it's true. It's like, it didn't just magically happen. And when they ask, how do you get them to do that? Do what? Like, listen, like how you said, how Pia said, it's the expectation. People don't give their children expectations. Anyways, that's all things that boost, I think, your confidence level as a parent. Is just when you see your kid thriving, you see them doing well, you see them excelling in different areas, and you like, that's my child. Like I did that. I helped them get to that point. Like DeWayne saw his daughter handling and was like, why do you need me? I know at the end he was like, okay, Like he was in a good place because you're like, I did that. Like I helped them to get there. And so that boosts your confidence without even nobody saying anything. You're like, okay, yes, my parents' status just went up another level. So I hope that answered your question.
Yes, yes. Brady, we're gonna start with you on this next question, so you don't have to
Can I add
bring
something
up
real
the.
quick before you go on, Sammy?
Please, please.
And Brandi can be first for sure, no doubt about it. You're right about that, that boosting of the parental unit,
Yes.
feeling good. And I think, I'm listening to Pia. I have a friend named Tia. But anyway, we talking about you, girl. Don't act up. Anyway, what Pia was saying about her daughter and, being in this moment with, in the area of the arts, in this case, ballet, one of the things I try to instill in my children, I'm not a sports enthusiast and I didn't try to drag them into that, but Alice wanted to play basketball and baseball and all this kind of stuff. And then when they both got to an age where they could talk to each other, they wanted to do tennis. And I was like, all right, so we found a place for them to go and do tennis. And they just played tennis for whatever the weeks were. I forgot, 5 or 6. And so they said, well, we want to re-up. All right, we re-up, doing the tennis again. In the middle of it, they said, we're going to quit. I said, oh, not today.
Not after I paid that money.
I said, we are going to finish this. You don't have to re-up for a third time, but you're going to finish this. We're going to go out here. We're going to have fun. I'm going to watch. I'm going to applaud. I'm going to do everything, but we are not quitting. And that's one of the things is that it may change on you. It may not be as fun and thrilling, but we will complete the task. So that was something that I knew was really important for them to do. Some of it, the stereotypical stuff that sits out there about African Americans is one, but the other thing is too, because it's you have to decide whether you want to do something, and are you really committed, or are you just on the surface about it? You need to think about this. Like Tia said, we gonna jump or we're not gonna jump. What's happening?
Pia.
Oh, Pia, I'm sorry. And you have those conversations, but I think what we're trying to instill is that you got to complete it. You just can't stop in the middle. I mean, there's many times we want to get off the merry-go-round, but we got to ride it until it stops.
I'm going to chime in on that really quick. When my daughter was 9 and the studio that she was at, they brought in this new teacher, and she was British and she had this very severe look, and she was, came from the Royal Academy, and she came out and she introduced herself during some little show that they had. And Erica got in the car and promptly said, okay, well, when can I quit ballet? And I was like, in June, and she was like, no, when can I quit ballet? I'm just talking about ballet. I'll do jazz and everything else. And I said, in June. And I said, you haven't met this lady. You don't know what she's going to be like. You haven't trained under her. I said, and by the time you start to figure all that out, you will have learned choreography, and you've got a team that's depending on you to be there. You've got your classmates that are counting on you to be a part of that show. I said, so in June, after the show, you can decide whether or not you want to quit. And one class into this new teacher, she fell in love with ballet. That's when she really fell in love with ballet. And that was the teacher that we ended up leaving that studio for and following and stayed with for 6 years, because, she so fell in love with it. But that's, if you allow them just to quit on a whim, they don't know what they're getting into yet. It's like, no, you got to follow this through a little bit, and then you can make that decision.
Absolutely. So the question I was going to lead off with for Brandi was, who at the young adult phase do you go to for advice, or are you asking other parents for advice at that phase?
Hell no. And I don't know if we're allowed to say that, but I'm just going to put that.
We're not censoring anyone. Yeah, go for it.
You know why? Let me tell you why. Because in my peer group, all my friends, their kids are younger than mine. So all of my kids are hitting their young adult phase before most of my friends. And for the ones who have kids who are hitting their young adult phase, like kind of at the same time, I guess, or their teen and preteen stage, I love my friends to death. Most of them are my sisters, right? But having been in a position where I take care of most of their children and have for many of years, it's that thing we were just talking about where you look around and you be like, thank you, Lord. All of them are wonderful. It's just, I learned very early on that my parenting style is not the same as other people's. I'm very strict. I'm a strict parent. I like to have a lot of fun. I like to do a lot of joking. Like with Kai, I told you when he hit that stage and we could really get to that joke, we could joke all day long. But at the end of the day, when I tell you something, you know I mean it. Like, period. I don't even have to tell you in my mom voice yet, but unless you push me to go there. But you just know we could be ha-ha, and then I tell you something, and then you're like, oh yeah, mom. There was just no question. And other people, they don't do their kids like how I do my kids. I tell my kids all the time, like, I'm very communicative. I tell you exactly what I want. And maybe that comes from being an only child. I don't know. Because like, I don't want to hear the whining. I don't want to hear arguing. I didn't have to deal with that growing up. I didn't have nobody to whine with and argue with and fight with. You know what I mean? So when I say shut that down, I don't want to hear it. That's what I mean. Like, you know, so, but other people let their kids do all that. Other people let their kids tell them how it's going to be. And like I told you before, I'm running a dictatorship over here, not a democracy. And most people I know run a democracy, and I just can't get with it, because when we're standing somewhere and I'm like, so what do you want to do? And they're like, I don't know, let me check with my child. I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, excuse my language. I'm sorry. I tried to whisper it a little bit. I'm just like, wait, so I need to wait for you to make an adult decision because you got to check with your child first. Like, that for me is very difficult. I struggle with that. So I don't really go to others in my peer range. Now, with that being said, I will sometimes reach out to maybe my mom or my dad with certain things. But again, like DeWayne said, they're grandparents and they're in a grandparent state of mind. So some things that I'm like, oh no, like you about to lose everything you got. They're like, oh, well, you know, let's get, and it's just like, wait a minute. You weren't that relaxed and that just chill and carefree, you know, if the tables were turning, it was me. And then so I have to remember they're in a whole different mind frame. They're in the grandparent mindset. So it's hard, I think. And parent groups, let me tell you something, because I joined those just for fun, because I want to see what people are talking about and what their problems are, right? So I could, again, boost my parental feelings, right? And I just be like laughing. But those are really hard, because a lot of people, I'm not one of those people, but a lot of people do not have other people's best interest at heart, right? So if somebody asks me for advice, I'm going to give you wholehearted advice because I care about your well-being. I don't care if I just met you 2 seconds, but most people don't care about other people's well-being, right? It's just a known fact. It is just out there. So people join these parent groups and they ask for advice all the time, and people steer them down the wrong way. And it's just like, this is why there's so many kids out here messed up, because you, instead of parenting, went and listened to this fool over here who doesn't even have their kids. It's like when single women listen to, you know, or married women listen to single women and want relationship advice. What? If they had good relationship advice, they would be in a relationship. It's the same thing. You can't go to people who are not parenting their child and ask them parenting advice. I don't know how to better put that. Maybe there's a better analogy. I'm sure you could think of one for me, but I don't know.
I mean, you gave
I
us the
love
too
it.
long didn't read at first, and then went into why. So you
I'm
made
sorry.
it clear. You made it very clear.
No, I
Go ahead,
love it.
Dwayne.
I love what you're saying, Brandi, because I totally agree with that. I have a colleague who I really enjoy. I have 2 colleagues. One have kids, and the other one is a single woman. And so, you know, you talk about your kids and what you're doing,
Yeah.
and whatever. And so there would be a comment from the single lady like, well, you know, I wouldn't do that. I would make them do da, 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 da. And I was like, uh-huh. And so, you know, I kept hearing this, and it wasn't jiving for me, and it didn't stop me from doing what I was doing. But then I was talking to the lady who has 2 children, and I was saying, she said, you know, I listened to our colleague, and I just listen. That's it. I don't go and pick that up and take it home and try to deliver that. I said, because it's not going to work. I said,
No.
I never think that. And I was like, do they know that they just need to shut it down and just move on? But
no, they don't know. They don't know. Like, they really in their mind, and you just really want to look at them and be like, let me know how that works when it's your turn to try it. I'll be right here to laugh at you when you come back to tell me. Yeah, like,
Exactly. I'm like, I don't need that commentary, nor am I soliciting it either.
No.
So, it's like, thank you very much, but no, shut that down and move on. So I had to realize that, and I did, but it was always consistently. It's almost like, you're a bad parent, you need to do this. You're a bad parent, you need to do this. And I was just like, well, this is working well for me.
Yes.
I can sustain this, so this is going very well. So I don't need to hear that. But I've never really talked to anyone. Pat and I will obviously, parents will talk to each other and stuff and say things. And if we think each one of us are out of line, we'll talk amongst ourselves. We will not let anybody know they can divide and conquer. So, but yeah, but I've never really solicited. I remember my dad one time. Oh God, isn't it sad to reflect on your childhood? But anyway, we were at church and I was in the driving stage. And so he used to let me drive from church. And so I said, can I drive from church and stuff? He's like, oh, I don't know. And then his friend chimed in and said, oh, you gotta let him drive, da 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 da. My father politely said, this is my child and I will make the decision on whether he will drive or not. Thank you very much. And he was very calm, but very direct about it. And then, of course, when we got in the car, don't you ever ask me a question I done made a decision on, I done made a decision. You ain't gonna whine your way out of this or whatever, whatever. And I was like, where is my mother when I need her? But yeah, that taught me a whole lot. It's like, no, don't act out in front of people and start asking questions you think it's gonna change because you're in a group situation. Because I will act out there as well as in the car. So you decide.
I tell my kids that very thing. I think I'm very much like your father because both me and my husband, we tell our kids that all the time. We say, don't let somebody else get you in trouble. Like you already know before we leave the house what the rules are. And we also tell them the rules don't change just because we go to a new environment. I don't care if we at auntie this person's house, uncle this person's house, grandma's house, whatever. It doesn't matter. If this is our set rule, just like your dad, don't ask me no questions you already know the answer to because you're going to get yourself embarrassed, right? Like, don't do that to yourself. So, you have it where they try and test it depending on what it is and if they really want it. And then you have to throw it back in check and be like, I know you didn't just, oh, okay. And I always hit them with, well, what is the rule? And then they come back with what the rule is. Okay, so did you already know the answer to your question? They're like, yes. And then the adult is standing there looking like, oh no, what did I get myself into or get them into? And it's like, you should, don't try and parent on something that wasn't your place to parent on. And we wouldn't be here.
Oh my gosh. Pia, hop on it.
Hop in there, Pia. Stop us.
I forgot what was the question.
Do you reach out to any parents during this adulthood phase for advice?
Nope.
And then why or why not?
No, mainly because most of my friends, they either never had children or they're just of different ages, so, and then, like I said, Erica left home at 18. So, even if they were of the same age, we're in really completely different things. She's not living at home, at least not, full time. She comes home back and forth. And she wasn't living in a dorm when she moved out. She moved out to her own apartment. So, yeah, it's just been really, really different. But, thinking back to something DeWayne said about being told he was a bad parent, when I decided to homeschool her, I got a lot of that about how I was ruining her and that was going to be awful and, don't do it. She needs to be in school and blah, 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 blah. And those same people come around when she was 17 or 18 talking about, you made the right decision. And I'll tell you, DeWayne doesn't know this. I ran into somebody that we went to high school with, somebody that was in your class. And ran into him at a restaurant, and we're both waiting for our food to come. So we're just sitting there and we're chit-chatting, and he decides he's going to stop me and tell me, he's like, when I first found out that you were going to homeschool your daughter, I didn't agree with it.
Who asked you?
And I was like, yeah, I don't care. And he's like, but now I think that was really the best thing. And I put my hand on his knee and I said, you know what? I still don't care. Because I didn't ask you about how to parent my child. You did not put any money toward it. You didn't put any time toward it. Why would I care what you think about how I was parenting my child? I was like, that's nice. I'm glad you see another side to what homeschooling could be. I'm glad I opened up that door for you. But I don't care that you now approve of how I raised my child. I'm good with it. I'm real clear that I'm happy with what I did. You don't have to be happy with it. Yeah, I don't think he really hasn't said much to me since then, but that's okay. Because it was never about you. Why do you think I needed your opinion? So I've always been, I think making the decision to homeschool, I had to get really secure with what I was doing really quickly, because I was taking that different path. I was doing something that not everybody else was doing. When Erica decided that dance was going to be her career, we made the decision that she wasn't going to college. That was her choice. That was something that she had to want to go to college. And since she didn't, I was fine with it. And I got a lot of pushback on that, because she wasn't going, well, what do you mean she's not going to college? She doesn't want to go to college and she doesn't need college to dance. And if later on she chooses to go to college, guess what? College is still there. I was one of those kids that didn't want to go to college and I was forced to. And I spent a lot of years and a lot of money trying to do it. So if she doesn't want to go to college, I'm going to support her and create a pathway for her to get into the career that she wants. And if later on she decides to go to college, it's still there. It's not going anywhere. She can make that decision. But I got a lot of pushback. So I've never been one to depend on somebody else's opinion about how I should raise her. As a matter of fact, people come to me. That's the way it should be, really, right?
Period. Period. Pia. Go for it, Brandi. Go for it. Go.
She just
Hop
reminded me of something. A lot of people parent for approval. They parent for approval. They parent for their kid to approve what they're doing. They parent for other people to approve what they're doing. Sometimes they even parent for themselves too, because they're trying to convince themselves that they are great and awesome. And when you parent for approval, things like somebody to come to tell you that they didn't approve of your child homeschooling, that weighs on some parents, that weighs on them. And then they teeter with a decision because somebody else told them that they didn't approve of that approval. I know a lot of people who suffer from things like that. And that can be, what's the word? It's very confining and chaining and lock you down and depressing when you parent for approval, because you're never going to make everybody happy. It's just impossible. So I think right now you had the fortunate, I don't know, luck, I guess, of talking to 3 people who don't obviously parent for approval, because we're not so worried about what other people think about how we do it. But there is a lot of people out there, and this conversation would probably be a lot different if you were interviewing them.
Absolutely. I'm trying to stump you guys. I got another question coming. And you could start off,
comment
Brandi.
on that, but that's all right. Go ahead and ask your question.
Well, when
when
you hop in, you can bring that comment in. But the next question is still in relation to advice. So since none of you seek help from others, you guys got your good handle. Do others come to you, and you could just nod if it's yes for everyone? Does anyone ask you in the young adult phase?
Maybe. I mean, the big thing has been one of my colleagues at work. Her son graduated, I think, a year before Alex or something like that. Her son is in New York right now for 3 months, and he has a degree in business with emphasis in marketing, of all things. And he graduated from Oregon State. And the whole idea of him going to Oregon State was a prestigious school. He wanted to work for Nike. Needless to say, he's not. And so they said, well, you're so lucky because Alex got a job. Alex needed a job. So he wanted to live. So he needed some coinages. So he needed to go out and do that. If he wants to go on the trip, Alex will pay for that. But anyway, so we kind of laugh about it and stuff. I feel bad for her because, you know, she's of Asian descent. Not to say that that means anything, but I know she
It
wants her
does.
son to, huh?
It
She wants
does.
her son to be real, like, you know, extraordinary and do this stuff. And, you know, and I said he could have went right down the street to Cal State Long Beach and been just as happy. But that's another story. But that's been kind of, it's been a comparison issue more so than it's been an advice issue.
I know some of the a couple of the parents that I'm friends with from one of Erica's old studios. They've come to me, you know, looking more toward when Erica, when we made the decision she wasn't going to college, and we found a training program for her to do. Both of these parents came to me and were like, oh, well, you know, Erica's there. Okay, well, yeah, you know, maybe I'll have my daughter do that. And these were parents that were very strong about this. They've got to go to college. They've got to go to college. And, you know, I told them, I was like, I don't know that this is for you because you really strongly believe in they have to go to college to dance. You know, so send them. And both of them ended up going someplace else. You know, they're going to go to college and major in dance and do that. But you know, it was that comparison type of thing of, you know, they thought I was foolish for not forcing Erica to go to college. And then when Erica landed on her feet, still doing what she loved, still getting the training, it was like, oh, there are other options, you know. And in the end, they're doing what it is they needed to do. But you know, it was interesting just to see that comparison happening. And I kept saying, don't follow me, do follow your path, you know, follow the path that you need for your kids. But yeah, there are other options out there, and it doesn't make it a wrong option because it's different than what everybody else does. You know, as a matter of fact, I'm kind of glad she's following her own path because she'll be so much happier doing it, just than rather than following along with what everybody else tells you you're supposed to do. So you're just one in a million instead of being one in 100. You know, follow your own path, you'll be fine, you know.
I mean, I've spoken to so many people about their like career paths and their own identity, and I'm like, you cannot decide the rest of your life at 18. Like that, although we decide things on school and take out all these loans, but like that should not be the point where you're like, okay, I'm good to go, and like I cannot pivot from this.
Mhm.
There can't be another degree where I'm like, actually, I'm interested in this. Like there are so many options, and we just, especially at the Ash Academy, want to make sure that
You know,
people know that there's so much more room than
there's a
what.
lot of room. There's a show I watch, and I won't cop to what show it is. But
Put it in
one
the
of
chat. Put it in the
I'm,
chat. No.
I'm not. No, I'm not telling you what show it is. If you know, you know. But one of the women on this show came in, and you know, she's got 3 degrees, and she's a professor at Johns Hopkins,
How
and
do I
she's a
already know the show?
shut up. She's a social commentator, and
Yeah, I
you know,
already
she's
know.
from Africa, and you know, and all of a sudden now she's like, I really don't want to do half the stuff I'm doing. You know, I got those degrees, and I'm doing the work that I'm doing because that was my mother's dream. You know, and now here I am heading into my 40s, and I don't want to do this. And watching her break that information to her mother, I was like, she was terrified to tell her mother, I'm not doing what I want to do. And I was like, how sad is that? That, you know, she spent all this time and they spent all this money. And it was her mother's trophies. It wasn't her trophies, you know? And it's like, no, this stuff has to be about you because you're the one who has to carry it and do it.
Right.
And, you know,
Right.
I mean, you know, and your parents should really be proud of whatever it is you're doing because it's what you enjoy versus you're going to get this kind of a degree and do this. And
That
then
was
you're
one
not
of the
happy doing it.
that was one of the things that I knew that because I had my experience with my father particularly, um, and my mother obviously was the referee in the house. She's the one that brought the kindness and joy, and the dad was like, "This is the rules." But anyway, you know, coming from the South, I realized and understood that, you know, a degree was very important, going to school, advanced, yada yada yada. But it was so interesting when I was filling out those papers, they did not know one thing to do to help me with that. But with my kids, I said I want them to be and do what they wanted to do. My son came with me talking about he wanted to test games. And I said, testing games don't generate the coins you need to buy games. So you might want to think about that. And so he thought, and so he says, well, maybe computer engineering. Because whenever he told me he wanted to do something or go into an area that he thought I was going to say no to, I found a way for him to go and talk to people in that field, you know, who are doing that work and stuff. And, you know, he got scared. I said, why are you getting scared? It's not a commitment. It's just information search, you know. So, and the same thing with my daughter, you know, she wanted to go into nursing, which was shocking to me. But it's like, all right, that's what you want to do. I did try to convince her to become a doctor. And it wasn't because of the accolade to say I have a doctor in the family or anything. It was just because of her acumen with science and math. Oh my God. She was taking a chemistry class her first semester and tutoring in that same chemistry class. Oh. And I told her, I said, you know, she was working with her friends. And I said, you need to go to the department and tell them that you were tutoring students so that you can get paid. Well, I don't want to charge the students. I said, no, the school will pay you for doing that. She said, really? And so she got in there. She's like, oh, this is great. You know, sometimes you have people, sometimes you don't, but you're getting paid. So, so anyway, but you're so right, Pia, into supporting the, you know, your children, what they want to do, and being, you know, help them find the little nooks and crannies to gather information to confirm that or not confirm that for them, whatever that is and stuff. Because, you know, you always sit back. I to this day, I still sit back with a if I coulda, woulda, shoulda thing. Sammy's trying to kick my butt out of that, but that's another story. Because listening to my parents, you know, I know when I got my degree, I gave it to them, say, here you go, you paid for it, it's yours. So,
you know, I had a friend who was, when I met her, she was a respiratory therapist and she loved what she did. And she was making so much more money than, you know, I was at my little job at the time. You know, she's making 3 times as much. And she really, really enjoyed it. But her mother was dead set that she had to have a doctor in the family. And her older brother was 20 years older than her. So he was really already set in whatever career he had. And her cousin, who was raised as her brother, he was a cop and, you know, progressing through that. So there wasn't a chance he was going to pivot and become a doctor. G was the only option. And her mother pushed and pushed and pushed until she finally said, she relented and said, okay, and found, she decided to go into optometry and found a school in Boston and went to Boston and lived there for 3 or 4 years until she got her degree. And she came back and she had, over 2 years, she had a couple of jobs and kept, I don't know whether she was getting fired or she quit or what, but she never held a job for like 2 years. And then she stopped working, you know, because her parents became older and she became a caretaker and everything, but she could not hold a job in, you know, this field that her mother was, I need to have a doctor in the family. And she absolutely hated it. And she was like, I should have stayed a respiratory therapist. I was so much happier, you know, but she did it because her mother wanted her to.
Has everyone gone already? I don't want to skip Brandi if you were the last one. And I've forgotten the question at this point. Let's be completely real. Season finale. I'm not remembering. We're having great conversation. It's not like,
great
okay.
Conversation.
Yeah.
You can skip me because I don't know what the question was. So, you know, there's that.
Wow. Does anyone remember it? Because it was a good one, and I want Brandi to answer it before I do move on, because it's a little bit deep where I'm going next.
Ooh, just go deep. We don't know the question.
Okay, so we'll come back to it if I remember it. But I did want you guys to reflect on if there were any sacrifices or goals or aspirations that you had that parenthood got in the way of, and do you have any regrets about it?
No, like I said, by the time I had my daughter, I was 36. And, you know, I had done all of my own personal things. You know, I would have loved a bigger house. You know, that was about it, you know, but I have the house that I had. I managed to buy a house before she was born. You know, I had my degree, I had jobs, I had a career, I had the training that I wanted. I explored a lot of things. So by the time she came around and, you know, by the time well, by the time she came around and my husband had already started talking about homeschooling, I was ready for that phase of life, and so there were no regrets or feeling like, oh, gee, I could be doing this, that, or the other. I always took, when opportunities would come my way and I couldn't do them because, I was full time with her. Um, I didn't regret it. It was a choice that I made, and I knew that, raising a child, it's only for so long. It's for a short period of time, a short window of their life, and so in my mind, I just wanted to enjoy that. And anything that I was missing was less important than what I was doing with her. And I knew that I'd have opportunities after she left. I mean, and indeed, I got into my photography. I became a docent at the Getty. I've done other things since she's left, that I now have time for, but I don't regret any moment of those 18 years that I spent with her 24/7.
I would agree. I have no regrets. I don't think I suffered anything. Um, Matter of fact, the sacrifice was easy if there were sacrifices. Obviously, I can't identify them. They must not be real for my kids. I know that when Alex was born, that's when I started grad school. And, and Pat, Pat is so interesting at times that, she knew she was going to be a mother. So she put away 6 months of her vacation time so she could take off for 6 months and get paid. And I was like, I never would have thought of that. It was like, well, this is what we got to do. We got to deal with, So as I said, she is a great mother and always thinking in that realm. But we didn't sacrifice for anything at all. If anything, it was more important for them to have exposure to things and experiences, and and to make sure that those things happen for them and stuff. So much so that sometimes it got a little scary because they wanted to invite their friends on some of the experiences. And I was like, no, I'm not paying for it. And I know their parents not going to pay for it. So we ain't going down that road. But nonetheless, they would certainly want to invite somebody. But no sacrifices, no, nothing. Yeah.
Y'all are so polite.
Thank you,
I
Brandi.
feel
Come on in. Tell the truth. Shame the devil.
let me just say, sometimes, in all honesty, I'd be like, can I get some more sleep? There is a sleep sacrifice that goes on even when your children are not babies anymore. I mean, like I told you, I got 19 down to 10. And I sometimes just wish, like, can I just please just a little bit? Because your time, once you have children, is no longer your time. It is everybody else's time. And as much as you want them and as much as you want to be a parent, just for me, like, I love my children, but sometimes I do the sacrifice of giving up all your time for somebody else sometimes does get to me, because them dark circles, I always used to wonder why older people that I saw would have these dark circles under their eyes, right? And for years, like, I'd never had the dark circles. Then when I started getting them and I realized it was due to lack of sleep, I was like, oh, like, and a light bulb went off, because I was like, oh my gosh, like, you just look tired. And even if you feel well rested that day, people will be like, oh, are you tired today, Brandi? And it's like, damn, like, I know it's looking bad. It's getting bad. It's at that point now, because the underneath the eye gets darker and darker. So there's that. And I would also say, but no, definitely no regrets. But one thing that I also noticed, and I didn't experience growing up because I was an only child, but food is important to me. I love to eat. Anybody who knows me knows I love to eat. I mean, it's just like one of my favorite things to do, right? You don't realize how much more you're willing to sacrifice, like, your meal for your children. Because sometimes there were little stages where I would cook something and I thought I had enough, and you just had enough to spread amongst the other people, right? And then you get to your portion and you're like, well, dang, like, I didn't realize there was only like this much left. And you eat it and you take it in, and it's a sacrifice that you make, and your belly is talking to you later because you're really hungry. But then you think, oh my gosh, I mean, I guess the alternative would be that my kids starve versus I starve. So I wouldn't say that it was a regret, but definitely an eye-opening moment for myself, as far as the sacrifices that parents make just behind the scenes. And I remember it, and I brought that up because I remember one time, I don't remember what we were eating, but one of my kids had said something to me, like they were being kind of smart. And I said, do you know? And it was about food. And about them wanting more food. And I had said that there wasn't any more left. And they said something smart about how at somebody else's house, they get seconds and thirds and this and that. And I remember being like, a little bit, where it's like you hit that one nerve. Let me tell you about yourself right now. At that person's house, there's 3 people in the family. At this house, there's 8 people. And I remember being very matter of factish and then letting them know, like, and did you even know, like, I didn't even eat because, you got your food. And I thought to myself, oh man, like, that's hard. I wonder how many times my parents sacrificed something, whatever it would have been, for me, and I didn't even know, and parents do that a lot. And I don't think, again, depending on what it is, I don't think we have full regrets on it. And most times we don't even remember. But since you asked the question, I was like, well, yes, I do remember not eating, and I do remember not sleeping and thinking, man, if I could just get, a little bit of those. But now, as you can see, well, maybe you can't see, but my belly, the way that it's looking, I'm not missing any meals right now. So.
It's funny you say that about the sleep piece because it is so different between a father and a mother.
Yes! Yeah, tell the truth. Tell the truth.
So, whenever I'm at home with the kids, I'm thinking Asian Alex, and they were, middle school or high school or whatever, they would not bother me. So like on Saturdays, I could lay on the couch, take a nap. They'll stay in their rooms. And as soon as they hear their mother come through the door, mommy, 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 you thought that they had to tell the story of the century or they needed something that was so desperate and stuff. And I just sit and watch this. And then, of course, Pat goes right into mother's duty and say, okay, let's get this. Let me put this down and put this over here. And we're going to go ahead and get this stuff done. I am still on the couch sleep.
But they didn't want to wake you up and bother you.
They would not wake me up. I hope they would wake me up if the house was on fire. But they would not bother me as they would bother Pat. And Pat never said anything about it, and I'm sure she was thinking just like you, Brandi. It's like, well, why aren't they messing with that fool and they're on the couch and stuff? And they did. They did. Even Asia and I, we make fun of Alex because Alex, he loves him some mommy. And so we'll be sitting on the couch watching TV or doing whatever. He'll come out, where's mom? And we're like, we don't know. And he's like, when is she coming back? We don't know. Are you going to be okay? Are you all right? Because he wanted his mom, he wanted to know what was happening and stuff. And then, of course, with the invention of cell phones, he would call her. He's like, where are you at? What you doing? What do you think? Your dad is there. No, I want to talk to you and stuff. So I was like, I've gotten now quite very, that's why I said it. No sacrifices whatsoever. Whatever I wanted to do was done.
Over there. You know what's so funny? I'm so glad you mentioned that because I don't know, Pia, chime in, but my kids will do that. And I'm not as good as your wife. I'm not as good as Pat because I will be like, wait a minute. They'll come from another room where their dad is literally right there to say, Mom, can you do that? Can you get, and I'm like, wait a minute. Did you just leave the room where the other adult is where your dad is at to come in here and ask me? Or I'll walk in from being gone somewhere and they're like, can we wait?
Your dad was here the whole time.
Yes. Like, what?
No. Let me tell you, my daughter's in San Jose. Her car started making some kind of a weird noise, right? She called me. Like I know anything about the car. I'm like call your father. And it's not like there aren't cell phones. It's not like, when we were coming up and, you call the house phone and you talk to whoever answered the house phone.
Yes.
I'm like, call your father's cell. Why are you calling me? I don't know anything about car noises. She's like, oh, okay. She turned around and called them. But
the dads, I don't know. They be having it a little bit easier. I'm talking about present active dads. They still be having it a little bit
still easier.
than moms. I don't know what it is, but kids just gravitate to wanting the moon and the stars and everything above from the mom, but let the dad chill.
It's so ingrained that when my stepsons moved in, and Eric they homeschooled for the first year they were here under his tutelage, and Eric would get them up in the morning and they'd be out doing whatever it is they had to do, and Eric would drop them off. He'd bring them back here basically and drop them off at like 5 or 6 o'clock, and then he'd decide he was going to go on with the rest of his night. And I was like, no, it's not going to work that way. These are your kids. I mean, I'm here to help and back you up and, and be your support, but these are your children. So when you come home, on the days that you're at work, because he only worked 10 days a month, on the days that you're at work, I will make sure everybody is fed and is safe and, whatever. But on the days that you're home, pull up, park the car, and get ready to cook dinner, because this is your family too. I was like, no, I'm not just going to, these boys, because their mother passed away, these boys don't need me as mommy, they need you as daddy.
Mm-hmm.
And it caused a big row for a long time between the two of us, but I was like, they need you, they don't need me. I'm Pia, I'm not mommy number 2, I'm Pia, because they're too old, for mommy number 2. So you need to just park the car and be prepared that your evening ends here, instead of, you're going to keep rolling and getting the other things done. And, for those 8 years, it's like, no, you get to actually parent. You get to do the full-time work of parenting these 2 boys. I'll keep Erica out of your hair, so you don't have to worry about that as much, because she's a girl and you don't get that. So, but the boys are yours. And, he finally stepped up, but, it was tense for a while.
It was a process, right?
It was a process. It was a process, because he did not expect me to stay. Oh, nope, not doing that,
Yes.
Well, I was going to say during Brandi's, because each Parenthood episode, people trying to get me to cry. Luckily, I pulled it together. But no, just the sacrifices of the parents, whether it's a goal or like an aspiration or literally a meal. I definitely want to shout out my parents, all the sacrifices throughout the years and years and years and years. I do appreciate them, and I do appreciate all of the parents who have shared with us over these 3 parts, because it's not easy. Having to take care of a whole other human or multiple humans is not an easy feat. So we do appreciate everything that you guys are doing as active parents. So I did want to ask, what is the greatest lesson your children have taught you?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Gotcha. Got all 3 of finally.
Sammy.
Good. All right. There we go.
First thing,
DeWayne, you got this.
They're going to take care of me. That's what I was thinking. They're going to take care of me. Now I took care of them. But go ahead, Brandi.
No, you got this, DeWayne. You the first one.
Yeah, that was, the thing is that they're going to be okay. God forbid something happened to either one of us, as far as parents, they're going to be okay. They have a good foundation. They have a good network of people who they could talk to. And, it's so funny, like my daughter, she's in Arizona, and I have an aunt and cousins there and stuff. And she will not, and I guess she wants to have her own space. So she has her own space. She don't call them. She don't do nothing. One time she sees them when we come down. And I was like, and my aunt already told her, said, if you ever get put in jail, I got the bail money. You don't have to call your parents. Call me. I'll get you. And I was like, well, Lord, we don't want to use the bail money, but anyway.
Can you just give me the money? I ain't going to jail.
Yeah, really. We don't need none of this. But no, that they're prepared. They truly, truly are prepared. They have a roadmap. They understand. So much so that sometimes they say things that just blow me away. My father, who's been dead for 4 years and stuff. Alex, like when he passed and Asia was going to school, he's like, hey, I want to give Asia $1,000 a semester for school so she can use for whatever she needs, whatever she wants. Even though he knew that Pat and I were doing our piece and all our scholarships and what have you. And I thought, wow, that was really a come up. We moved her into her apartment, and Alex says, I want to buy her a TV. And he bought the biggest thing. And I was like, Alex, she don't want nothing that big. Well, it's too bad. It was a good deal. So
See, Brandi, he's trying to one up you again. Get me going again.
I don't know.
Oh,
but
gosh.
but that just says, they're going to take care of each other first, and they can think for themselves and help each other out and stuff. Because they're pretty tight. They do a lot of things unbeknownst to me that I find out later in a good way. So yes, I'm proud of both of them. I know when I sat down with my daughter, she wanted a Letterman's jacket because she was on the honor guard or color guard, whatever the heck that thing is. But anyway, and so she lettered, and so she's like, well, I want to get a Letterman's jacket and stuff, but they're expensive, because she's always concerned about the cost of things. Alex is not. So I said, well, let's go down here and check this stuff out. So we went in, and next thing you know, she's getting an $800 leather jacket that she only wore for one semester, but it is beautiful. And then she came to me. Her mother sent it to me about her prom. She says, well, Alex didn't go to his prom. He didn't want to go. And Asia's like, well, yeah, I saw this dress. And I was like, oh. And then Pat's like, tell him how much it costs. Tell him how much it costs. And it was $400. And I looked at it. I said, oh, this is nice. Let's get it done. And then we went to the tailors, got it fitted and stuff. And, she went to the prom. She was cute. I said, you ain't going looking like, half dressed, like you ain't got no sense here. But that's me, though, because, I always want the fashion. Look good, girl. Look good. But anyway, but yeah, they're going to be all right. And they're going to do their thing and stuff. So I'll stop there because I can keep talking about my lovely children.
That's so sweet.
Pia, Brandi wants to go last, so go ahead, Pia. We'll let her.
What was the question?
Oh gosh, here you go. What is the greatest lesson your daughter has taught you?
I'm with DeWayne on this. She very quickly showed me that she was okay, that she could do her own thing, and not that she doesn't need me, but that she was quite independent. I mean, when she left for the summer, it was a 1-month program, and during that period is when we found out she was accepted into the company, or into the larger program, the full year program. And she and one of her roommates, they started looking for apartments, and I'm like, oh my God, you're not 18 yet and you're looking for an apartment, not a dorm, an apartment, and they went and they got everything together, and got their utilities set up and cable, and starting putting stuff together. And I'm not there doing it for her, and when once they got set up and classes got rolling, then she started looking for a job on her own, and she didn't have a car. So, she's figuring out, okay, we're going to live here so that, we're close to these places where we can work. I mean, they had really worked it all out themselves. And so very quickly, I discovered, it was like, if I, for whatever reason, dropped off the face of the earth today, she's good, And now that she's in San Jose, she called me about 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, and she says, okay, well, I'm not coming home for Thanksgiving. I was like, what?
Right? Like, what?
And, and she says, well, we only get 4 days for Thanksgiving, but we get 3 weeks for Christmas. And her oldest brother is in Oakland. And she said, so I'm going to go to Oakland, and I'm going to spend Thanksgiving with him. And then I'll be home for the 3 weeks, over Christmas break, when I can be there longer. And, she had made this decision, and she let me know what her decision was. And I was like, okay, I appreciate that you're an adult. You've made this decision, and I know that you can make these choices. So, that's what she taught me, is all the independence I tried to give her and teach her how to make good choices. She's using it. She's using it against me, but she's using it.
Amazing. Take it away, Brandi. What's the greatest lesson that your kids, specifically Kai, for the adult or young adult, what has he taught you?
Specifically, my oldest, the young adults, he has taught me how precious life really is. Like, and I say that because it's I'm like a warrior, warrior. Yes, like I get anxiety, so it's like he's away at college. It's COVID, and I'm like, kid, I need to talk to you every day. I just want to make sure you're alive and things like that. You know, I worry. I just worry about safety if you're going to make it through the day, and I'm constantly thanking the Lord for all of us waking up, you know, and constantly praying and things of that nature. But I stop and I look around at other people and other instances, and I say, oh my gosh, you know, this time that we have, whether it's good days or bad days or far away or close together, like it's just all very precious and valuable, and it all adds up to something, right? So he's definitely taught me that no matter what kind of parent we are, like it's a privilege to be able to be somebody's parent and be able to instill in them the things that you want for them and guide them to live the lives that they want to live. And then they come back and they thank you and they love on you and they tell you they're too busy living their grown people life to come visit you and, you know, things of that nature. It's just, as much as like that's hard and it hurts, you just look back and be like, again, I did that. It's that, you know, parent boost, and you're just like, oh my gosh, like I created this person, I loved on this person, I nurtured this person, I helped to make them great. And I think that's such a privilege to be able to do that. And so I am very thankful for that. And that's the greatest lesson, that no matter how many times I messed up or dropped him on his head or, you know, whatever it was, it's still going to be okay. And I helped to create something good, great, you know? So that's my biggest lesson.
Awesome. Now, in conclusion, I would like each of you to share like some like a key takeaway for parents who are moving into the same phase that you're in, like their kids are about to be young adults. What's some advice that you could give them for that transitionary period?
Trust them. Trust them. You know, they are they don't know everything. You know, they're not, there's no way they could at 18. But, you know, listen to them. They have a voice. They have their ideas of what it is that they want to do. You know, be there as a sounding board. Um, you know, help provide some bumper, but you know, trust them and let them, you know, start to take those steps out into the world.
Awesome.
Be willing to listen. You know, don't jump to conclusions and stuff. Try to get the full story of whatever it is happening, and see how can you support them. Not tell them all the time. You know, let them ask their questions and give them information, because you know you don't want to toss your information out there and it falls on the floor. You want them to be able to hear it and hopefully apply it. You know, they're like with Alex. I got all these little stories now that are popping in my head. Alex is poised to graduate, and he had this elective class. He says, "Oh, it's an easy class, whatever." He took it for granted, and he failed it, and so that held up his graduation. So
That's me with astronomy. I didn't fail it, but it was the easy A class, and that did not. That was not an easy A.
did not come out that way. So so anyway, he was like, "Oh no," he's crying to his mom. I said, "Well, let's call the instructor." Da da da. So here I again go to school with Alex, you know, to see what's what. So the instructor's like, "Hi, how are you?" "I'm fine." I'm telling him I'm Alex's father. "And what brings you here?" I said, "I'm just here to listen. I ain't got nothing to say. Yeah, this is Alex's story." So, so Alex goes on and talks to him, asks him questions and stuff, and something happens. He finds out I'm at Long Beach City College. He says, "Oh, you're at the college?" "Yeah." He says, "What do you do there?" And I said, "It's not about me. It's about him. Y'all talk." So I said, "We can talk later. No big deal." So anyway, he had to take the class over. He thought he didn't, and so he'd already participated in commencement. I've done that too, so I understand how that is. But anyway, so he had to take the class this summer, and in the summer at the CSU, you know, those classes are expensive. It was $3,000 for that class. So his mother said, "You will pay me back. We're going to pay for this class, and you're going to pass it too." And so
Because it's not going to
He
be
got an A in
6,000.
the class. He got an A in the class and stuff. And I said, Alex, I mean, we're not checking on you doing your stuff because this is your stuff. This has your name on it, and you're earning the grade. And you got to stay on top of it because every time I tell him, I already know. I said, all right. So I just let him go with his already know. But but later on, after all was said and done, he came. He says, I appreciate you supporting me the way you did. And I was like, yeah, you had to learn, Alex. I've had those moments, and I had to learn the hard way. I had nobody to talk to though, because I know if I told my dad, it would have been over. So, but at least you learned the lesson there and stuff. So, and Pia's right. They're going to be pitfalls. There are going to be things that are happening. They're going to reach out and just want to, ask or say something and stuff, and be there for them. And don't be judgmental. Don't be judgmental. Listen to the story. Figure it out. What you're going to do. But definitely just always be there. I'm always a soft place to fall, and they know that.
Mm-hmm.
In summation, Brandi.
My piece of advice to any parent who's getting ready to enter the stages or already have entered the stages of parenting a young adult is don't be scared to still parent. A lot of people think as their kid is getting older, 16, 17, 18, 19, into their early 20s, that, and especially once they turn 18, I know a lot of people who think, oh, they're going to reach 18, they don't need me anymore. I don't have to parent in the same capacity. A lot of kids still need parents to parent and guide them and give them information and have their back and all of that stuff. So, don't be afraid to parent. It is okay to do that. And if you make a mistake, that's okay too. And they will be resilient and bounce back, and the world will go on. So that would be my biggest advice. I think, again, a lot of people are afraid to parent for whatever reason. And a lot of times it's because maybe their kid doesn't agree with them or has a different opinion or whatever the case may be. But that's why communication is key, and you discuss it. And then you go from there and make whatever is the best choice, like Pia said earlier, and then do that.
One of the things I know we didn't spend a lot of time on the black and white issue, but that came up with me with Alex a whole lot, and particularly because he had a friend whose father worked at some aerospace company. So when he graduated from high school, he was able to go work with his dad, and a little job. He was making $15, $16 an hour, which is not, he living at home, he doing good. And so Alex says, well, why I gotta go to college? And I said, well, how you gonna make your coins? And so he quickly understood. He said, oh, I need some skills. I said, you need something that somebody gonna pay you to use. So and it needs to be legal. So but and we had to sit down and really say, I don't work in an industry where you can walk in without a degree. I had to get a master's degree. That's the only reason I went back to school, to get a master's degree so I can get a job at the community college. So you don't have that luxury. And I said, it's not that it's bad for you and good for your friend, because when you finish your schooling, you're going to make more money than him in this field that you want to go into. So, you may be a supervisor one day. I don't know. But nonetheless, though, don't look at him and equate your life to those limitations, like you were saying. There's other things to do and stuff. So, we've had those, come to Jesus moments, because I want them to know when you get in the industry, it's going to be interesting. People are going to, think that you can't, and you can. And, you have to speak up for yourself a lot of times. And people are not going to promote you because your skill set is all there. You may have to fight for that if you want it. I don't know. But just be prepared for that and understand what the society is. And I'm sure with all these things that are happening in the street, the protests and what have you, a variety of things, the Black Lives Matter and the George Floyd, and on we can go, and all these things that are happening. I said, I just want you to be aware of that, and not to get scared or anything, but just know. Know, always in the back of your mind, there may be something flowing, and you'll see it. If you're looking for it, you'll find it. But just be open to that and understand that. And so there are times that you can come back and talk, like this election. We had a huge discussion about this election in this house. So, but those are the things that, I think we really need to help our young adults as they're coming through to understand, because I really wasn't involved in elections when I was, going to school or what have you. And then, of course, as time gone on, I realized the impact that the elections results have on me. And it's like, we got to do something. But anyway, I just want to put that on the recording so that people can understand.
He said on the record. Okay, can I put a part 4 on the recording, Sammy? You need to do a part 4, raising Black children in 2020. And I say that because we didn't really get into it here, but all of us obviously have children of color. And even if we didn't go into just everything that happened in 2020, but it is different raising your children in areas that are predominantly white or areas that are predominantly filled with people who are not colored people, and it does have an impact on how you raise your children. So I think you need to do a part 4. And I say a part 4 because that's a whole situation in itself.
Well, the best thing about season 2 is that we're going to push the envelope a lot more. So just you wait. We will put it on the docket. It will happen.
Boom.
Yes, so definitely. Any final words from anyone else? Y'all got it off your chest? Nothing else on your spirit?
Appreciate you having us.
Oh, absolutely. I will say all 3 of you, because Pastor has been a nickname I've given people that have stood out during the panel. All 3 of you guys have shared so many gems. So we have a 3 pastor service today. Appreciate you guys. I just wanted to thank everyone who has been on these panels to share, because it's not easy also to share. So it's one thing to parent, but to talk about your parenting. And since it's an evolution, you're like, oh, there's, even after we stop recording, you're going to think about something else that you're like, oh, I wish I would have shared that one thing. Or you start thinking about, oh, maybe I did have some regrets here, or like the most rewarding part of. So this is really to start the conversation for all of you parents and to continue the conversation. Hopefully this will be a springboard for other people to just talk and kind of let go of some of that baggage that some of us have, or many of us are working through right now. So yeah, this has been an amazing season. Thank you everyone for tuning in. This was the season 1 finale. I am Sammy Ash, the executive director of the Ash Academy. This was the Inspire, Uplift, Engage podcast, season 1. Thank you.